My friend's father is a comedian in Denver, and he had a connection with the local club that was in the suburbs outside of Denver. In my first year, I just went up on stage and told people things that I had thought about and left the stage. And luckily in Los Angeles, I'd gotten a good response, so I assumed that was going to happen in Denver. That didn't happen in Denver. Every night when I was hosting the shows, I was met with silence. And I did Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then Saturday comes along, and I show back up to the show, and the people from the club were saying, "Where is the emergency fill-in comedian?" Looking around in a panic, "Where is the emergency fill-in comedian?" And Nancy Norton, who was the feature, was not there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to Nancy? I thought she had gotten hurt. I was so worried, and she'd been so nice and supportive of my comedy, even though it was bombing. It turns out I was the problem. The owner of the club came up to me and said, "You don't work in my club," handed me my check for the entire week and sent me on my way. My comedy I had caused an emergency. They needed to get an emergency fill-in comedian to replace me. So I left the club on Saturday, and there was a line out the door to come into the show, and friends of mine were all in line waiting to get into the show. And as I was walking out, they were like, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "I just got fired." And they were like, "Oh my gosh." It was so humiliating. And so they were like, "Oh, meet us at the Mercury Cafe." And as I was walking out to the parking lot, I saw Nancy Norton pulling in her car, the supportive comedian. And she was like, "Hey, where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I just got fired." And she said, "No. Oh my gosh. Just trust me. Be so happy that these people don't get you. They completely get me, but that's my problem, and I'll deal with that another time. But just be glad that they don't get you." And at the time, I didn't understand why this, comedy club on the outskirts of town, why that would be a good thing that they didn't get me. But I got in the car to pull out of the parking lot, and it was snowing, covered in ice. I pull out of the parking lot, lose control of the car. The car spins out of control in an intersection, and as it's spinning, and I'm like slowly sliding towards this pole, I'm just like, no! Like, the club was called Wits End. And, obviously I was at my wit's end, and the horror that my life would end after being fired from Wits End Comedy Club outside of Denver and then slamming into a light post and dying was just way too much for me to handle. And actually, now that I'm telling this story, I'm remembering they did offer a car. It was an old station wagon that had clowns painted on the side that said, "Follow me to Wits End Comedy Club." So the only possible worst situation would have been if I had taken them up on the offer to use their station wagon, and I had been leaving in that car and slid out of control and died in the "Follow me to Wits End Comedy Club." Maybe that would have been a little bit worse.